the investments necessary to get people back to work because they refuse to give up tax cuts for millionaires. Their policies and billionaires. Their policies are a prescription for disaster, one that puts families, communities, and our nation at risk. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the Speaker, and I'm a little disappointed in the amendment by my friend from Arizona. This is our biggest deficit hawk in the House. He wants to cut $18 million from the defense budget. Did I get that number right, Mr. Flake? $18 million. I mean, we got a $612 billion defense budget. What are you, 0.00001% of the budget? Not good for a senator from Arizona, Mr. Flake. I would say, let's really get at this. Man, you want to cut the budget? Republican president, Republican Congress funded a whole two wars off the budget. We're talking about trillions of dollars added to our deficit. You don't go after those, Mr. Flake. We need you to go after those. We'll gladly support you. $18 million out of a $612 billion budget. I'll vote for the amendment. And you know whenever I vote for one, yours wins. Let's go after some real stuff in that Pentagon budget. And let's not go after jobs as this underlying bill does. Come on. You know, you talked about jobs the whole campaign. I haven't seen a pro-job bill yet from the Republicans in this Congress. And yet this bill, H.R. 1, cuts millions of jobs. I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Mr. Flake, I don't know if you know about it, but the cuts to the clean water monies.
That they will address all comments through the chair, not to individual members.
Madam Chair, did you know that the bill cuts millions of jobs from our economy, the cuts to the Clean Water Act, the cuts to the High-Speed Intercity Rail Act, other infrastructure cuts? In my state of California, we're losing, just on this bill, almost 50,000 jobs. Total jobs around the country, almost 300,000. Come on. This is not a way to both cut the deficit and keep our economy going. I happen to represent a border district. I represent the whole Mexican border with California. And Mr. Flake, you know the border very well in Arizona. Through the chair, I'm sure Mr. Flake knows very well the border in Arizona. And he knows. In this bill, the GSA construction and acquisition funding line has been eliminated. Eliminated. $894 million worth. I don't know about in the state that Mr. Flake represents, but I'll tell you in California, you're eliminating the modernization, a several $100 million modernization of two of the biggest border crossings in our country and the biggest one in the world. In my district, 300,000 people cross the border every day legally. Legally. And they're crossing mainly for jobs and for shopping. We all know we need to make that far more efficient, that crossing, so people can spend money in our country and create jobs. You've eliminated the whole modernization budget out of this, monies out of this budget. And I'm sure it affects Arizona. The Otay Mesa crossing, where we have all the commercial crossings in California, gone. The biggest border crossing in the world in San Ysidro, gone. Another big one in my district, Calexico, California, gone. We're leaving billions of dollars on the table, Madam Speaker, for jobs in our economy. If we don't have efficient border crossings, we don't have trade, we don't have shopping, we don't have the crossings that are legal that we all want to encourage. These modernization programs went directly at that, not only in California, but in Texas, in Arizona, and I'm sure in Arizona and New Mexico. And yet all those jobs that's created by more efficient crossings are now thrown away. So the gentleman from Arizona who wants to give up efficient border crossings in his state, you might tell him, Madam Chairman, I don't think that's a good way to run for the Senate. Taking $18 million out of a defense budget of $612 is pretty miserly stuff. It's not even a good symbol for a guy running for Senate of the United States. We should really go after what the Republicans said they're going after. Let's end the war in Afghanistan, save trillions of dollars off the deficit, but more important, the cuts that we have seen in infrastructure in this country, the cuts we've seen in GSA are costing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs. This is a job buster. It should be defeated. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Gentleman's time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Madam Speaker, I rise to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While I support the Flake Amendment, I oppose the underlying continuing resolution. The Republicans are here today offering another piece of their no-jobs agenda. And they are in disarray and are hastily pushing an irresponsible and dangerous spending bill that threatens jobs, undercuts American innovation, and jeopardizes investments in rebuilding America. Creating jobs, protecting the middle class, and reducing the deficit are indeed my top priorities. We should be working together to accomplish these very valid goals. However, Republicans have controlled this House for 41 days, nearly 2 months, and brought up 0 bills to create jobs. The mindless cuts that are on this floor today mean 1 million jobs cut. 1 million jobs cut from our economy. No jobs for nurses, no jobs for teachers, no jobs for police, no jobs for firefighters, no jobs for manufacturing, no jobs for small businesses. You cut the deficit by putting America back to work, not by cutting Social Security. Republicans aim to cut Social Security and Medicare. When Republicans say they're cutting costs, they mean cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid until they don't exist. Ask my seniors in the 21st Congressional District of New York. They'll tell you to leave alone the Social Security system that has served them well. Republicans want to make you pay for big oil's billion-dollar subsidies, make you pay for higher drug prices, make you pay taxes to start a business, a small business, make you pay for CEO salaries, let Main Street take a hit while Wall Street gets a bonus. The American people want Republican leaders to look out for constituents first, not corporate friends. This careless resolution cuts jobs and damages our economy. Just 6 weeks after taking charge of the House, Republicans are not just ignoring jobs, they are cutting them, and they admit it. This morning, our Speaker, Speaker Boehner, had a response to our concern that this bill destroys American jobs. And he said, so be it. Well, I guess that he meant, so be it if there are 1,300 fewer cops on the beat, because this bill terminates the cops hiring program. So be it if there are 2,400 fewer firefighters on the job protecting their communities, because this bill eliminates funding for safer grants. So be it if there are 20,000 fewer researchers at the National Science Foundation. So be it if there are 25,000 lost construction jobs and 76 construction projects are canceled in 40 states. So be it if there are 200,000 children kicked out of Head Start programs. And so be it if thousands of teachers will lose their jobs. Mr. Speaker, so be it isn't a good enough answer for the hard-working middle class of our country. I agree with the President that we must out-innovate, out-educate, and out-build the rest of the world. We will continue to measure every effort by whether it creates jobs, strengthens the middle class, and reduces the deficit. I have submitted 8 amendments to this irresponsible Republican spending bill to protect and grow jobs, out-innovate other countries in clean energy, protect our seniors, and ensure quality education for our children. I support efforts to balance the budget. However, I will not support a spending bill that threatens our economic recovery, that cuts 1 million jobs just after we've created 1.2 million private sector jobs since last March. And it is achieved on the backs of senior citizens, children, and the working middle class. Republicans have gone too far, sacrificing Americans' health, safety, and future in order to protect their special interests, while offering no real plan to create jobs. Madam Speaker, the American people are united, and they are saying one thing: show us the jobs. I urge defeat of this bill, Madam Speaker, and I withdraw my motion, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from the U.S. Virgin Islands rise?
Madam Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to the Flake Amendment and also to the underlying bill, and I join Leader Pelosi and my colleagues on this side of the aisle in calling this an irresponsible spending bill that threatens job and economic growth, hampers our global competitiveness, and harms the people who are hurting the most: the working families, the middle class, and the poor. This CR targets vulnerable Americans because it would cut funding for the things they most desperately need, like food stamps, Head Start, and funding to heat their homes, all to keep a reckless Tea Party-driven campaign spending cut goal. And at the end of the day, these kinds of hurtful cuts will never get us to a balanced budget, and they certainly will not secure the kind of future we want for our children and grandchildren. As one of the 5 representatives of the people of the U.S. offshore territories, as well as a ranking member of the subcommittee that has jurisdiction over the territories, I am particularly troubled by the painful cuts this CR will make to the important programs that the people of the territories rely on. The bill slashes 8.33% from the General Technical Assistance account of the Office of Insular Affairs. Madam Speaker, the Technical Assistance Program provides support not otherwise available to the insular areas to fight such things as the deteriorating fiscal condition which is facing all of the islands, and our ability to maintain the momentum that has been made in making and sustaining systemic changes. These funds also support student training programs for high school and college students, as well as for training for insular professionals in financial management, accounting, and auditing, as well as other programs. The program also provides funds to assist the islands in maintaining accreditation for our colleges and universities. What is critical about this meager program, which has not seen an increase in its budget in more than a decade, is that it is funding that the territories could not get anywhere else in the federal government. Sparing this very small but essential program from the majority's indiscriminate meat cleaver approach to budgeting would do infinitely more good than any harm it might cause to the budget. After all, the small amount of money we're talking about here does not move the meter one blip. Madam Speaker, the people of the territories recognize that the federal budget cannot sustain the path that it's on, and that reductions in spending must be made. But we have done our part and will continue to do our part to reduce federal spending. As you look at the budget for the territories, it has not increased in several years, and it has been cut for a number of those years. But the cuts we're talking about in the CR do not only affect the territories. In addition to cutting jobs, there are also disastrous cuts that the Republicans are proposing to health-related programs that are critical to millions of Americans and integral to all of our efforts to achieve health equity and to eliminate health disparities. These health disparities, which we know leave millions of people of color, rural Americans, and low-income Americans in poorer health, without reliable access to adequate health care and at greater risk for premature death from preventive causes, also cost the nation a great deal from the economic point of view. In fact, we know that between 2003 and 2006, the combined direct and indirect costs of health disparities and the subsequent premature deaths that often result, the cost was $1.24 trillion. Rather than base budget cuts on measures that will save human lives in addition to precious federal resources, the Republicans are instead proposing cuts that will achieve the exact opposite. We all know from their efforts to repeal the landmark health care reform law, a law that has already begun to expand access to affordable, high-quality health care to more than 30 million Americans who were in the ranks of the uninsured, that Republicans either do not care about the importance of ensuring that every American and their families have health care coverage, or they do not understand the value of such coverage in promoting health, wellness, and thus improving life opportunities, or maybe it's both. And now we also know that they don't care about or understand the benefits and the needs for the programs and efforts that will significantly improve the health and wellness of some of our nation's most vulnerable residents by reducing the very health disparities that cost this nation so much in human lives and in money. In fact, they want to cut more than $1 billion from the nation's community health centers, the very centers that provide medical homes to millions of hard-working Americans whose health care needs would be poorly addressed without them, and to cut $210 million from maternal and child health block grant programs, more than $300 million from family planning, and $758 million from the WIC program, all of which would have a detrimental impact on the health and wellness of women and children and young families across this country. I urge my colleagues to reject this budget
Time's expired.
CR, which does nothing to improve the economy and hurts
For what
vulnerable
purpose?
Americans.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York, a member of the committee, rise?
Well, thank you, Madam, and I would move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yesterday, as we know, was Valentine's Day, but the majority here in Washington is showing no love for the families throughout the district that I represent and all across the rest of this country. The new majority said they would cut wasteful spending, but instead they're slashing jobs for police officers, jobs for firefighters, jobs for teachers, and many other jobs all across the country. They told us they would work to eliminate needless layers of bureaucracy, but instead they're cutting heating assistance for the elderly, food aid for young mothers and infants, and college aid for 15,000 students in the district that I represent and hundreds of thousands of other students all across the country. They said they would focus on the economy, but instead they're eliminating energy research and development that we need to create green jobs and compete with other countries around the world. They're sending the workers home on 76 high-speed rail projects underway in 40 states, all very necessary. This hurts real people. It does nothing to address our long-term deficit, and middle-class families are the ones who pay the price. The American people don't want more hidden cuts and budget tricks. We need a plan. We need a solid, secure, positive plan. The national debt we hold today was not created over the last 2 years, as some people are saying. The fiscal crisis we are facing today was inherited from the Bush administration. Under the previous administration, annual budget surpluses were turned into annual deficits. It was Vice President Dick Cheney who said, "Deficits don't matter." Clearly, that's a lesson the new majority has learned well, because while they do cut spending with this CR, this bill will undoubtedly worsen our budget deficit. Why? Because it will kill hundreds of thousands of jobs. That means more people unemployed. The people didn't send us here to tend to the needs of Wall Street and oil company CEOs. So why does the majority stand against the plan to end special tax earmarks that would actually cut the deficit? We could be discussing how to end government red tape. For instance, in 5 years, we could save many billions of dollars by allowing Medicare to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for seniors. But instead, the majority here wants to cut the administration budget for Social Security. This plan hurts New Yorkers and others all across the country, and it hurts the district that I represent. 15,000 college students in places like Ithaca and New Paltz will get hurt with the maximum Pell Grant falling by $800 as cost of college continues to go up for students all across America. 123,000 low-income pregnant women and new moms in New York will get less assistance with the pre- and postnatal nutrition they need. That'll happen to thousands and thousands of others all across the country. Nearly 2 million New Yorkers who applied for LIHEAP this year will find it harder to heat their homes next year, as will so many thousands of others across the country. Job training programs like Job Corps in Sullivan County will help high school dropouts get the training they need to get good jobs. Will get cut out, too. Like a blindfold child at a piñata party, this continuing resolution takes a bat to all the wrong things at exactly the wrong time. I would urge my colleagues to oppose it. Stand up for the American people, stand up for a real plan to reduce the deficit, and fight to save the jobs this country needs so desperately. Thank you, Madam.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Chairwoman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I rise in support of the Flake Amendment and know that we, at this point in time, the American public has asked us to tighten our belt. We have to do so, and I believe we have to talk and look at every single department, including the Department of Defense. This specific amendment deals with a very small amount in the Department of Defense, one that Secretary Gates has already outlined and determined that they do not need. This will not jeopardize those that are in harm's way. This will not jeopardize military preparedness. This is yet one small step. We have, I think, over 400 amendments today, and I'm delighted that those on the other side of the aisle are in support of the Flake Amendment, and so we certainly look for its passage. This right now, what we're talking about in terms of reining in spending, is absolutely what the American people demand. Yes, we've had spending on both sides of the aisle. Washington has a spending problem. We need to cut back on spending. We're spending $1.48 trillion in deficit spending, and I think the President's budget actually brings it up to $1.6 trillion. That's over $3 million a minute in deficit spending. I come from the private sector. I run a small business. I understand what's going on in the private sector. And I can tell you that out-of-control spending in Washington does not send the right signal, and in fact does hurt jobs. We have to get our fiscal house in order. This is what this is going to attempt to do, and we certainly know that spending, out-of-control spending, has not been the answer. I urge my colleagues to support the Flake Amendment. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
I rise to seek strike the last word. Thank you.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members. I rise to address what I consider the serious, very serious problems with this continuing resolution and this defense budget and the lack of attention to jobs. I'm going to talk about something that's quite unpopular. We all know that we have 9% unemployment in this country, which is significant. We all know that communities all over America are suffering, not simply rural communities, not simply suburban areas, not simply inner cities, but people are hurting, having lost their jobs all over America. In some communities, it's not 9%, it's not 10%, it's not even 15 or 20%. We have communities in America where there is 30 and 40% unemployment. There are those who would like to say, well, that's in those urban areas. No, it is not simply in urban areas. We have poor rural communities who have representatives who come here every day talking about they're representing them, when in fact they never speak to the needs of those communities. They don't talk about the lack of health care that people have had to endure for so many years, the inability for people in these rural communities to access clinics. Some of us are fighting for all people, not only the cities and the towns, but these rural areas that are being hurt so badly. Now, it is not popular to even use the word poor. As a matter of fact, you hear over and over again about concerns for the middle class. Of course, we're all concerned for the middle class. But who represents the poor people in America these days? There are some of us who do, and proudly so. And we are referred to as big spenders. Tax and spend, they say. And they don't talk about the poverty in their own communities. But let me just tell you, with this continuing resolution, the CDBG, a community development block grant money, is going to hurt all of these communities across America. Many of these representatives who support cutting CDBG from $4.45 billion down to $1.5 billion are going to hurt their cities. Their mayors are absolutely going nuts about what is happening with the cutting of CDBG, the last block grant funding that they can depend on to assist with economic development that helps to create jobs in America. You hear a lot about what we care about jobs. Well, we know what people care about jobs based on where they place their priorities. My friends who are cutting in areas where we could be creating jobs have demonstrated that they have zero bills to create jobs. The mindless cuts that they're proposing mean 1 million job cuts. No jobs for nurses, teachers, police, firefighters, manufacturing, small businesses. We need to put America back to work, and we can do this if we are sensible, if we are targeting the cuts in areas that can take it. Why are we spending the amount that we're spending on the military budget and defense budget when we have those who are telling us, for example, Secretary Gates announced his intention to terminate the Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle program and the Surface Launch Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile System. Why are we trying to disregard what we're being told by the very people who understand this defense budget better than anybody else? No, we want to continue to fund a budget that doesn't need any funding, not talking about how we reduce and eliminate the funding for Afghanistan and bring our soldiers home and put that money into our own domestic needs. We're talking about somehow cutting in ways that they would have people believe that they're helping them when in fact they're hurting them. This continuing resolution does nothing for strengthening the economy. It does nothing for creating jobs. It does nothing for support of those cities who are fighting desperately to hold on to opportunities for people who have nowhere else to turn. Not only do we have the cuts in areas that would create jobs, but also many of these areas are faced with foreclosures. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time's expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Gentlelady's recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I move to strike the last word, and I rise in opposition to this amendment because it doesn't do anything to create jobs. Of course, I shouldn't be surprised. Over the last 6 weeks since the Republicans took over control of the House, they haven't created a single job. In fact, they haven't even put a single jobs bill on the House floor. With this mindless, job-killing Republican spending bill, they are hurting the American people. This bill senselessly cuts over 1 million jobs at a time when we need them most, at a time when we can least afford it. This is nothing more than a Republican pink slip for America. This bill doesn't get our broken American economy back on track. Instead, Republicans are hitting American workers where it hurts. These merciless Republican cuts mean if you work in manufacturing, no jobs. If you're a cop, no jobs. If you're a nurse, no jobs. If you're a teacher, no jobs. If you're a firefighter, no jobs. If you're a construction worker, no jobs. Republicans aren't just ignoring jobs, they are slashing them. And that means pink slips for Americans across the country and across almost every industry. And if we aren't helping real Americans, where is this money going? Right into the pockets of big defense contractors. While Americans across the country are finding themselves out of work due to mindless Republican spending cuts, the military-industrial complex will actually be making more money. While they slash jobs and safety net programs, Republicans are actually increasing funding to the Department of Defense by $10 billion. This spending is excessive and way out of proportion with the needs of the American people. Even Defense Secretary Gates has found $100 billion in cuts and savings to the Department of Defense while still keeping America safe. That's the entire cost of the job-killing cuts Republicans are asking for here today. Instead of expanding our economy and growing the middle class, Republicans want to make you, the American people, pay. They want to make you pay to line the pockets of defense contractors, make you pay for big oil's billion-dollar subsidies, make you pay for higher drug prices, make you pay taxes to start a small business, make you pay for CEO salaries, make you take a hit while Wall Street gets a bonus. We need to look out for constituents first, not corporate friends. And this bill isn't even about reducing deficits, because we all know that the best way to reduce the deficit is to put Americans back to work, not carelessly gut government programs. Instead, we need to rebuild America and focus on winning the future. Today's bill is a choice between cutting the deficit or putting Americans back to work, and I am voting for jobs. We need to invest in our nation so that we can out-innovate, out-educate, and out-build the rest of the world. I want to see the words "Made in America" again. The American people voted for jobs, and all they're getting with this gutting and slashing funding proposal are pink slips. This is a heartless and careless plan that cuts real American jobs and hurts real American families. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Chair, I rise to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment before us is a start. 18 million out of 720 billion is a start. You might take it one step forward and let's end the war in Afghanistan, where we're spending $120 billion, and another 30 or so in Iraq. Now we've got some real money to talk about. Because this is a start, I find that it's an unworthy start, and therefore I oppose the amendment. However, the real issue before America is not how we can slash and burn in foolish ways that actually lose tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and indeed 1 million jobs in the next 7 months, which is the proposal before us with this continuing resolution that the Republican caucus has put on the floor. It seems to me that if we wanted to create jobs, we certainly wouldn't, as a first step, lose 1 million jobs in virtually every sector of the economy. Teachers that are providing services for the early childhood education programs, Head Start, they'll lose their jobs. Firefighters, 1,300 or more of them, 2,400 or more of them will lose their job across the nation. The COPS program, which has provided jobs for police in our cities, they'll lose their jobs, some 1,300. I just had men and women from my own district come in and say, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to take cops off the street? I told them, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand this CR. It is the most foolish, nonsensical slash and burn I've ever seen. I was at the Department of Interior in the mid-90s when we actually reduced, in a thoughtful way, over a 4-year period of time, the number of employees by some 12,000, from 90,000 down to the 70,000 range. We did it, and we continued to do the services. But you don't slash and burn. You don't just in a wholesale carry out a political promise of 100 billion and foist it upon the American public in this way, where we lose 1 million jobs, where we lose critical services. California has been at a water war for generations. We rely upon the Bureau of Reclamation. We rely upon recycling. We rely upon these programs, and yet you slash those, and those are real jobs and real programs to deal with the water problems in the West. Why would you do that? What's the point of that? Why would you go into programs where we need to educate? My daughter is a second-grade teacher. She now has 32 kids in her elementary program. An almost impossible situation. And your cuts that you're proposing will make that situation worse. She cried out to me this week, well, why are they doing that, Dad? I said, for some political promise made in a campaign without any thinking about the impact that it has on real human beings, real students who are trying to get an education. My final point is this. There are 5 things that lead to true economic growth. The best education system in the world, and so this CR cuts education. The best research in the world, and so this CR cuts research programs in science, in energy, in health care. The best infrastructure, and this program, this CR cuts infrastructure expenditures. You have to have manufacturing matters. We have to make it in America, and you cut out those programs that assist manufacturing. And finally, we know that we have to have an energy policy, and you destroy the beginnings of a green energy, self-sustaining energy program in this nation. Why would you do so many foolish things? I don't get it. Perhaps it's because your real agenda is the no jobs agenda. Madam Chair, I yield back my time.
Gentleman from California yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Georgia. For what purpose does the gentleman for Georgia rise?
I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we've had promise after promise after promise after promise that the Republicans were going to pay attention to what the people wanted. And what the people want is jobs, jobs, jobs. Now, I rise in opposition to this amendment, Madam Speaker, and I want to point out that these Republican cuts that have been proposed are draconian, they are extremist, they are bad for America. They're bad for our economic recovery. Everybody knows that we just came out of the worst recession since the Great Depression. We call it the Great Recession. We're just coming out of it, even though most Americans don't feel it yet. Certainly those folk up on Wall Street who got the bailouts, they feel the recovery, and they are back to the huge bonuses and salaries, and they are looking at this Republican Congress to release them from all of the regulatory measures that the Democrats put in place over the last 2 years so that they can continue to party. And while they party, their friends here in Congress on the Republican side of the aisle are busy trying to balance the budget on the backs of working men and women in this country. That's what the CR proposal is all about. It came out on Friday at 8 p.m. They issued their plan, and here we are on Tuesday arguing the merits or demerits, actually, of this plan that is nothing other than a plan that undermines America's future. This plan is going to cause severe job cuts, which will hurt our economic recovery. You know, it's ironic that, as reported in the Wall Street Journal, a new Wall Street Journal survey of economists shows that they expect the economy to expand at the fastest pace since 2003, a recovery that would be certainly jeopardized, snuffed out by this GOP plan. This is going to cut at least 300,000 private sector jobs, according to an analysis by staff at the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. These cuts, by the way, these 300,000 cuts are less than half of the total infrastructure cuts in the bill. These Republican cuts in investments in roads, bridges, transit, and rail include a cut of $1.4 billion in clean water state revolving loan fund monies, which is $23 million for Georgia. And Madam Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman is correct. The House will be in order.
I know that nobody...
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know nobody cares about the working men and women of this country over there, but I deserve to be heard. A cut of $6.3 billion in high-speed inner-city rail funding, that's going to cause people to not be able to go out and work to make that investment in America's future a reality. A $75 million cut in the Tiger II program. Those are transit projects, is what will happen in Georgia, just in the state of Georgia. And so we're talking about massive job loss, 300,000 just with transportation and infrastructure projects, Madam Speaker. The consequences of that extends into our future. It's actually strangling the future of millions of Americans, both working and poor people. And with that, I will yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Strike the requisite number of words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I won't take anywhere near that time. Simply to get back to the amendment from the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, which is the matter before us right now, and to say that I support this amendment, Madam Chair. The gentleman from Arizona has very, I think, properly brought up something that the Secretary of Defense has said is one of the areas in which the defense budget can be reduced and we can save money. You know, the greatest threat to the national security of this country today is our debt. The Secretary of Defense has said that. He has said certainly that it is a national security threat, as has the Secretary of State. And so we need to get this debt down. We need to get this deficit down. We need to do it in every single area of the budget. And I think that the gentleman's amendment here from the gentleman from Arizona is a very proper and very appropriate one, and I support it, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman from California yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
To address the House for 5 minutes.
For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
To address the House for 5 minutes, strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise to, first of all, support the Flake Amendment, but also to oppose the underlying bill and the drastic cuts that will devastate the most vulnerable citizens in our nation. Just to highlight some of these cuts, the bill will cut $25 million from the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, ADAP. Now, ADAP is a program of last resort for the poorest Americans who don't qualify for Medicaid or Medicare. Currently, there's a waiting list of over 6,000 people in 10 states to receive benefits from this program. $850 million in reductions to the CDC, organization whose first task is to defend us against diseases, infections. $850 million, that's smart. Let's just cut and make America more vulnerable. The bill cuts $1.6 billion in funding for NIH, so I guess we won't need any research since we're going to let the diseases run rampant in America. I mean, it goes so far as to say, in the District of Columbia, we're even going to tell you how to spend your very last dollar. But it gets better. Community health centers, where the most vulnerable are treated for their health, $1.3 billion in cut. Community health centers will lose the capacity to serve 11 million patients over the next year, and well over 3.3 million current patients losing their care within the next few months. The bill cuts $5 billion from the Pell Grant. I did hear that there were a lot of new millionaires elected to the Congress of the United States, so I imagine they can pay for their children's education. But maybe we should think about people that don't have the median income of members of Congress, people who don't make $175,000 a year, which puts all of us in the top 1% of wage earners. What about the most humble and the poorest and those who wish to aspire one day to lead this great nation of ours? Shouldn't they be given an opportunity? Not under this program. Let's cut the program, the basic program that allows young men and women to seek a college education, the Pell Grant. Let's eliminate billions of dollars from there also. But wait, $25 billion to the federal TRIO program. That's for first generation. That's the first kid in a family where nobody's gone to college. Let's just cut from that program too. The bill cuts $20 million from Gear Up. And wait, $1 billion from Head Start? Now, I'm just going to end with this. I know, I want the public to understand this. We get great health care here. Excellent health care. It's not free, but we get great health care. About $400. That's what they deduct from my check. My wife gets good health care. My daughter gets good health care. And so do every one of you get good health care. Shame on anybody that would adopt this kind of budget, knowing very well the kind of great health care that the American public. Cut your health care first before you cut the health care of the most poorest, of the most vulnerable in this nation. I regain the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
To strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, I move to strike the last word, and I rise in support of Mr. Flake's amendment to cut wasteful defense spending. Unfortunately, the underlying bill is just another part of the Republican no jobs agenda. Since the Republican caucus has taken over the majority, they haven't put one jobs bill on. I mean, they haven't done a poor job. They haven't done anything. It's as if they're not in favor of Americans having jobs. We know they are, but they haven't demonstrated it in anything that they have done, which is the important thing. Instead, as part of the Republican no jobs agenda, they bring up a bill to cut 1 million jobs, from the American middle class. These cuts are Republican answers for the job crisis that they created. Cutting 1 million jobs. If you're a nurse, no jobs. If you're a teacher, no jobs. If you're a firefighter or a police officer, no jobs. If your jobs are from American manufacturing, no jobs. If you're a small business person, who's going to have any money to even go into your store? No jobs for them either. The list goes on and on. If you want to know how we cut the deficit, putting America to work, not by cutting Social Security. Make no mistake, when the Republicans say they're cutting costs, they are cutting Social Security, they are cutting Medicare, they are cutting Medicaid until they cease to exist. Republicans want working Americans to shoulder the whole burden, the burden of taxpayer-funded spending spree for the rich while protecting millionaires and billionaires who refuse to pay their fair share. The Republican answer to the crisis they created You pay, American people. They must make you pay for big oil's billion-dollar subsidies. They want to make you pay for higher drug prices. They want to make you pay for taxes to start a small business. They want to make you pay for CEO bonuses. They want Main Street to take the hit while Wall Street gets a bonus. While Democrats work to create jobs, reduce the deficit, rebuild America, Republican Speaker John Boehner says, so be it if we lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. Is that what the American people said they wanted in November? The American people want Republican leaders to look out for constituents first, not corporate friends. And now the American people are saying, show us the jobs. We've been seeing a no-jobs agenda, a jobless agenda, 40 days in the majority and nothing to create jobs. No jobs for the American people, and Madam Chair, we need to make this change. Will the Republican caucus even today, Madam Chair, say that, you know what, we're not going to cut 1 million people, 1 million public employees out of work. We're going to actually do something to create jobs? Appears not, Madam Speaker. What we need to do is withdraw some of these massive oil subsidies. What we need to do is save some money by rewarding the wealthiest among us and industries that have not been responsible corporate citizens, and actually use it to put Americans back to work so that they can pay some taxes so that we can reduce this deficit. And make no mistake about it, Madam Chair, we are concerned about the deficit. $200 billion of it goes to interest on the debt. That money could be going to programs that help people, that help children, that help seniors, that can make and strengthen and improve our infrastructure in our country. But instead it goes to this massive debt built up by Republicans with their massive tax cuts to the rich, 2 wars, and big pharma giveaway. They created the problem. Now when we try to solve it, they want to put us back in the hole. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say that if this country, our country, has a deficit to fix, let's fix it by a bold, creative, courageous vision of America, rather than just cutting back the social safety net and taking away what little people have. We need to stop the Republican no-jobs agenda. I yield back.
Gentleman from Minnesota yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sometimes this is a complex debate. We hear words like CR. A lot of our voters and others who are paying attention to the work that they sent us here to do. And a lot of times they try to ensure that we use vernacular that, what does it mean? We're in the budget year of 2012 or budget year 2011, or we're doing a CR. I think the plain and simple of it is we're trying to ensure that what you are getting now, if you're on a job, if you're a police officer, that we don't turn the lights out on you. And my concern is to let you know that we have been steadily improving. The private sector has been creating jobs under the Democratic policies, under President Obama's guidance, and frankly, under this new budget that we'll debate, that is not what we're debating today, that speaks about competitiveness and speaks about infrastructure rebuild, putting Americans to work. So my gripe with the CR that my friends on the other side of the aisle have now put forward is that they originally came up with a $60 to $74 billion, maybe a thoughtful analysis of what we could cut. Remember now, this is in the middle of you working, and all of a sudden somebody comes and gives you a pink slip. But rather than stick with what might have been a thoughtful analysis, and again, I had not studied it, it had not been introduced, all of a sudden they go by the, we have to be dominated by voices of which force us, without thought, to now make it $100 billion. I'm as angry about the deficit and want a strong budget that we're not doing right now and want to work with my good ranking member, chairman of the Defense Subcommittee in the last Congress, Mr. Dix, on a thoughtful passage going forward. But I want to make sure we stay on a pathway of creating jobs. There is something to cutting spending. You have my commitment. We compromised just last month, or 2 months ago, 3 months ago, in December. Some of us agreed, some of us did not. But there were sizable tax cuts. I voted for tax cuts before. But let me tell you why what we're doing today is enormously dangerous. 1,330 cops will be off the street. 2,400 fewer firefighters will be off the street. We will take children or teachers out of classroom and lose 25,000 new construction jobs. There is a provision in the CR that wants to rescind stimulus dollars. Sounds like a bad thing, but those dollars are in the pipeline for construction projects where men and women of America are working and feeding their families. Does that make sense? Dollars that they pay taxes back to this country. I don't understand a plan that takes from the working man and woman in this country. I don't understand a plan, for example, that takes $2.5 billion away from high-speed rail, which all over America there has been a sense of inspiration about moving us to more efficient transportation, but the number of jobs to be created cannot be counted. That's an investment in this country. Or do you want to undermine the air traffic control system and begin to trouble America's airways? I sit on the Homeland Security Committee, chair the Transportation Security Committee. I am very hesitant to make a willy-nilly cut to the FAA. And so what disturbs me is why could we jump, or why did we jump, or how do we jump in 48 hours from 60 to 74 million, of which they said they were cutting? This is a continuing resolution, which means it allows the government, in essence, to keep going on what we are ongoing with. Means people are out there working, doing the bidding of the American people. And before you know it, because there were complaints and people talking about what they campaigned on, and all of a sudden it's a $100 billion cut with no thought. Now, I respect people being elected by their constituents, but it is interesting when you read polling numbers from individuals who happen to come from that background, the Tea Party that wants to cut everything, and you ask them about something in their jurisdiction, say, for example, an Air Force base. The polling numbers show, don't cut my Air Force base, but you can cut somebody else's. So here's my concern, Madam Chair. How do you cut juvenile justice in the COPS program? How do you cut the Justice Department for all of the voting rights enforcement? Let me just complete my sentence by saying I want to stay on a path. This CR is not a pathway of creating jobs. It's no jobs, and it stops America in her tracks. Let's stay on track and keep investing in jobs in America.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maryland rise?
Madam Speaker, I rise to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today because I want to express my concern that I think of the House of Representatives as a place that involves a lot of critical thinking about the work that we do. But the continuing resolution in front of us is neither critical nor thoughtful. It eliminates the COPS program. Well, let me tell you about the COPS program, not just around the country where it's going to result in firing 1,330 law enforcement officers, but in one of the counties that I represent where we have had, unfortunately, 18 homicides since the beginning of the year, where we need every law enforcement officer on the beat. 50 of those officers come from the COPS program. We would lose those officers under this continuing resolution. Looking at the firing of our firefighters. These are firefighters, first responders out there whenever they're called in every one of our communities across the country, 2,400 of them. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, we speak in numbers that are so extraordinary that ordinary Americans don't understand them. But I think with respect to this continuing resolution, ordinary Americans understand that under the resolution, 200,000 students, that's pre-kindergartners, will be kicked out of Head Start, just when we need to give these students a start so that we can grow them and educate them so they're competitive in the 21st century. We're not doing that. Instead, 200,000 students in every state across this country kicked out of Head Start, thousands of teachers who teach them. And this brings me to another cut, a number that the American public understands, Madam Speaker, $845. $845 is the amount that will be cut from the Pell Grant program. $845 for those of us who've sent a child to college is the cost of books for the semester. Madam Speaker, I'm so shocked by these cuts that I think that across this country, the students, if they're not going to get their $845 to buy their books, maybe they should send the bill to Speaker Boehner. Send their book bill to the Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am challenged to understand these cuts because when I think about an $845 cut to Pell Grants, in my state, that's 123,000 students. Madam Speaker, in Michigan, it's 646,000 students. Madam Speaker, in Arizona, it's 340,000 students. Millions of students across the country who lose $845 that allows them to buy their biology books, their economic books, their math books, the things that will enable them to be competitive in this century. So, like many Americans, I really don't get that. It is neither thoughtful nor critical. This cut would mean $2.5 billion in cuts to the National Institutes of Health for cancer research, for other diseases that plague our country and send our health care costs skyrocketing. We want to cut scientists and researchers and medical professionals who are trying to cure the great diseases of our time. I don't understand it, and I don't think the American public understands it. $1.4 billion in cuts for science and energy research, the very thing that will make us competitive in this next generation. The American people don't understand that. Children, 200,000 of them on Head Start. Firefighters, 2,400 of them. Police officers, 1,330 of them. 123,000 students in the state of Maryland losing their $845 lousy dollars to buy their books. Madam Speaker, I have to tell you, I think that like many of us in this Congress, we know that we need to bring spending under control, but it cannot be at the expense of working people. It cannot be at the expense of poor people. And so it is a sad day in the United States when this Congress has exercised neither critique nor thought in bringing cuts that will devastate the American public and result in no job creation yet again for the last 45 days of this Congress. And with that, I yield.
General